everybody, this is the Vikstrand. So one of the things that happened in this movie that made me raise an eyebrow or two when it happened was we have these, flashback sequences with a younger version of Augustine, aka George Clooney. And he's played by a different actor. That was very distracting. It's clearly not George Clooney. So my question is, why didn't they use this, de-aging technology, which they had already used in the movie, The Irishman, 1 year prior to the release of this movie? And you didn't even need to do that. You could have just, made his beard black and, dyed his hair black and applied a little bit of makeup. Then you would have made him effectively a younger version of himself. Why have a different actor? That's one of the least of this movie's problems, and this is one of these movies that I'm questioning, why make such an enormous movie just for a streaming services? You have $100 million just pissing away. What difference is that going to make to your streaming platform, having this big thing with George Clooney that people is going to watch and then immediately forget? There's not going to be any longevity to this thing, or I don't know. It is a movie that happened, and now I don't think a single person has mentioned it for about 4 years or something like that, but I'm here to fix that. This is my review of The Midnight Sky. So Earth has been subjugated to some kind of a cataclysmic event of some description. It's a little bit vague what exactly has happened, but essentially humanity is screwed kind of a scenario. I don't know if this was something deliberately done by the filmmakers or they wanted to keep it vague for whatever reason. Anyway, so we have this mission that is going to save humanity that is returning from K23. That is a moon that has been discovered around Jupiter, which may or may not be able to be a suitable place to to place the human population to. So they are returning to Earth. Augustine, played by George Clooney, and his Santa Claus beard is sitting in the Arctic regions, knowing full well that there is nothing for this ship to return to. It isn't? Have the entirety of the human population died and you're the only guy left? I mean, you're clearly are a bit delusional and you're losing your minds, and you don't even know if the little girl that is on the station is there or not. So how do you know that there is nothing for them to come back to? That is one of the things that made this movie a little bit difficult to watch sometimes, because they're having these statements that is pretty definitive, but they don't back it up with something that makes us realize, oh, that's because of this, and that. They don't explain enough. Sometimes movies can explain too much, but sometimes they can explain too little and leave us, just with more questions. Anyway, so he has to, for some reason, walk to a different station to be able to signal to them that they shouldn't come back to Earth. I don't know what happens if they do come back to Earth or not. It's not really much explained that either. So there's a lot of lack of explanation in this movie. So The Midnight Sky draws, inspirations from movies like Passengers, Interstellar, The Road, Gravity, and for making a more recent reference, the movie Spaceman. The thing is that it is a well-produced movie, it looks good, it's a visual spectacle. George Clooney is a pretty good director who has done a couple of quite decent movies over the years, so we are in safe hands here. However, this movie is just so uninteresting and boring, and I didn't care. And because everything was so vague and everything was just so kind of, we were never really engaged in what was going to happen. And every design and every shot and every sequence in this movie, I've seen that in previous movies, but they have been better. So the movie didn't feel as original as I hoped it would have been. And the movie ends with the flattest imaginable ending possible, leaving us with even more questions and even fewer answers. So, good work there, buddy. So, one of the things that I thought this movie did very poorly, as I said, it was, explaining what this, disaster that has struck Earth was been. I think they talked about pollutions at, one point. Is that why George Clooney can be up there as the last man on Earth in the Arctic? Because there is no pollution there? Because how is he supposed to get, from point A to point B? Where is he getting, the air that he's surviving on up there? Are they saying without saying that there is no more oxygen on Earth? Is that why, everybody's been, suffocated or something like that? A little bit like what happened in the movie 2067? Also questions that weren't answered or things that weren't addressed at all. They didn't explain this, or they might have explained it, but at that point I was just so uninterested and disinterested in what was going to happen anyway, so I was just, I might have missed it, but at that point I didn't really care. There had been a lot of these movies that has been released, at that point of, humanity screwed and, blah, blah, blah. And maybe I had seen too many of them for a, too short period of time. Or I just found this movie to be extremely disinteresting and I didn't really care anyway for it. In the end, The Midnight Sky is one of these movies that you might see once and then you will never watch it again, and then you will totally forget about it. And it is a forgettable movie, but there are some moments in this movie that was really impressive and actually looked good and made me go, whoa, that was actually cool. And as I said, good production value. George Clooney is really good, Felicity Jones is really good, but there is nothing really to attach yourself here. And as I said, the ending was, the harbinger of doom for this movie. It was just, The Midnight Sky is an underwhelming movie that wants to be big but failed to do so. And also, one of the key elements to this movie is the fact that almost every single sequence involving George Clooney is unimportant to this movie when you're thinking about it. You can have removed 95% of the entire sequences containing George Clooney, and we wouldn't have missed them at all. That is not a very good thing to have to say about that movie, but that's the case. I give this movie 34 points. It is too well made and it has too high ambitions to fall that far near the pecking order. George Clooney is simply too good of a director for that one, but it was a chore to get through, and those 118 minutes, I felt them, every single one of them. So have you seen The Midnight Sky? What do you think about it? Comment below, and I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.